Hey guys, this is the BioLane video log number 3. As you can see, we've moved outside. The first 2 logs was very rainy on those days, so I figured I'd give you guys a little change of scenery, show you lovely Florida. Only thing we're going to have to contend with is maybe a few jets flying overhead, as apparently we are directly in the flight path of Tampa International Airport. But I'm loud enough and we can talk over them, so it's not a problem. My first 2 video logs have been basically talking about philosophy, not really much training nutrition information. I can talk a lot about philosophy when it comes to bodybuilding and life, but I do want to take today to kind of talk about something I've been seeing that's popular, overtraining. I want to talk about overtraining. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, I read all the muscle magazines, and I noticed that whenever somebody was having trouble making gains, the first thing anybody pointed out was overtraining. Well, you're overtraining, you're overtraining, you're overtraining, you're overtraining. And it kind of became a catch-all for ineffective routines. And I can remember when I first switched up to, the power hypertrophy system of training, I had a friend who kind of convinced me into it. Not that particular system, but basically nonlinear periodization, working out every body part twice a week. And I was so petrified of overtraining. I said, dude, I can't do this. When I work out my legs, I'm sore for 6-7 days. He said, yeah, but if you start working, you're sore for 6 or 7 days because you work them out so infrequently. If you start working them out more frequently, you won't get sore. And lo and behold, for the first few weeks, I was very sore. And after a few weeks, I didn't get sore anymore. And I'm hardly ever sore. And so what I wanted to talk about today was overtraining. What is it? Does it exist? And is it necessarily a bad thing? What is overtraining? Overtraining that is defined by kind of the exercise physiology literature is basically training to the point where you experience decrements in performance, possibly endocrinological disruption, so your hormones may be depressed, and a lack of drive to train. So basically you're tired all the time, sore, don't want to train, and your performance suffers. That is not what has been popularized by the bodybuilding magazines and the bodybuilding culture. What has been popularized is this notion of overtraining, that you train a muscle so much to the point that it actually becomes catabolic, that you cannot grow. Let me be extremely clear on this. That has never, ever, ever been shown. Ever. There is 0 data showing that if you train a muscle so often or with so much volume, it actually becomes catabolic. Zilch. None. Doesn't exist. In fact, a lot of meta-analyses on hypertrophy show that not intensity, not load, but actual volume is what is mostly closely associated with hypertrophy, volume and frequency. Now, does it actually exist? Just because it doesn't fit the definition of what you've been told doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Overtraining, overreaching absolutely exists. It does happen. What I would submit to you is it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'll give that a minute to sink in. Overtraining is not necessarily a bad thing. I remember talking to Dr. Mike Zordos about this, and he's an expert on periodization research, and additionally a competitive powerlifter himself. And he said, sure, if you're overreaching, you're going to be weaker in training, you're going to feel like crap. But who cares what you feel like while you're training if you're making gains? If you actually perform better on meet day, if you look better on stage, who cares what you feel like if you're not performing well? Who cares as long as what happens is you perform better? And actually in overreaching studies, what they show is when you overreach, when you beat the crap out of yourself, you do have a decrease in performance. But what happens is, after taking a period after that of lower volume recovery phase, you will actualize those gains. And it's almost like a rubber band effect where you have a snapback effect. So you actually actualize those gains and you get far better gains than you would have gotten by not overreaching and then allowing yourself to recover. So I want to bring this up because a lot of people have been sold on kind of the HIIT type training, low volume, one set to failure training. First off, that sort of training, it will be the fastest to undertrain the muscular system and overtrain the nervous system. Besides that, many people who got into the HIT type of training did so because they followed a they maybe have started out and followed a high volume protocol, and they saw decreases in strength, performance decrements. They felt bad. They weren't recovering. Okay? And then they switched to a lower volume HIIT protocol, and they actualized those gains. And they saw gains during the HIIT. But I submit to you that they didn't see gains because of HIIT or because of low volume training. They saw gains because they were allowing themselves a recovery period to actualize the gains that they made by overreaching. They made those gains by overreaching. But they attributed it to HIIT because they didn't actualize them until they lowered their volume. So that's that's an easy misinterpretation to make. We tend to live in the here and now. We don't look at a training system as an overall system. Now, you don't want to chronically overtrain. If you chronically overtrain, that's a bad thing. But short periods of overreaching in a properly periodized split are very, very helpful. Also, when it comes to overtraining, I like what John Braz, who's a trainer out in Vegas, he has his guys squat basically every day up to a max. And he works with some of the strongest lifters in the world. And he said, I may butcher this quote, but essentially what he said was, if somebody kidnapped your family and held them ransom, and the ransom was, you have to squat 100 pounds more, you have to add 100 pounds to your squat max in 12 weeks. Would you squat once a week? Hell no, you wouldn't squat once a week. You would squat multiple times a week, because inherently we know that one time a week over 12 weeks is not going to get it done. So the biggest thing you want to keep in mind is that not only is weight training a protocol to induce hypertrophy, but it also is a skill. And you get better at that skill when you do it repeatedly. And you have a repeated bout effect when you do it every single day. Braz also says, if you're a garbage man, the first time you go and you pick up cans all day and you toss them in the back of a truck, you will be sore and feel like crap. So what do? Do you call in to work and say, I can't go in, I'm sore? No, you haul your ass out of bed, go to work and gut it out. And eventually you stop being so sore. People who work construction, people who work roofing, your body adapts. There is no other tissue that is adaptable like skeletal muscle. Muscle will adapt to almost anything you throw at it. Now, like I said, that doesn't always mean it's optimal for hypertrophy, but I would say that the vast majority of people undertrain way more than actually overtrain. And even if people overtrain, like we discussed, if you overtrain in a properly periodized manner and incorporate it properly with recovery periods, you will actually make more gains than not doing that, than not doing those overreaching phases. One other thing I wanted to discuss in terms of overtraining was a lot of people make a big deal about how long their workouts are. Well, I can't go over an hour because the cortisol boogeyman is going to get me. A couple things. One, those studies looking at cortisol over a workout were done in endurance runners. There is a much bigger difference in terms of a constant endurance event of continuously moving than there is of a weightlifting protocol where you're lifting for short bursts and then resting. And further, what I would submit to you is that cortisol, short-term increases in cortisol are not catabolic. Cortisol is not a hormone like insulin, where insulin is a very fast-acting hormone. You get a release of insulin, it binds to a receptor on the cell and causes changes to happen virtually instantaneously, within minutes. Cortisol is a hormone kind of like testosterone, except kind of the opposite, where it has to bind to its actual transcription factor. It works on the DNA level, and and it works by increasing the transcription of certain types of DNA. So, if you haven't had biology, this is probably not going to make a lot of sense, but essentially, it takes time for those mRNA transcripts to build up. It's not an acute response hormone. Short-term rises in cortisol from a workout are more indicative of how stressful the workout was, how difficult it was, how much damage it caused, how much metabolic stress it caused. And actually, if your workout is effective, it should be causing a lot of metabolic stress and damage. It'd be pretty useless if it didn't. And kind of to that point, a very new paper by Stuart Phillips that just came out, he looked at increases in strength, hypertrophy, and lean body mass, and associated those with workout-induced increases in hormones like IGF-1, testosterone, and growth hormone. You'll be shocked at what he found. What he found was that cortisol, not only not catabolic or not associated with lack of hypertrophy, cortisol was actually more strongly associated with hypertrophy and lean body mass than testosterone or growth hormone or IGF-1. I'll let that sink in a little bit more. Cortisol, workout-induced increases in cortisol were more positively associated with gains in muscle mass and lean body mass than those other quote-unquote anabolic hormones. Am I saying cortisol is anabolic? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is short-term increases in cortisol are actually indicative of you having a good workout, of you having an effective workout because it caused stress. And what I'm also saying is that the short-term increases in testosterone and those other hormones are not as crucial as we may have once thought. I'm not ready to say they're inconsequential, but there's a lot of data out there that suggests that it's your overall long-term levels of testosterone and anabolic hormones that are way more indicative of hypertrophic outcomes than short-term increases. The short-term increases just seem to kind of almost be a stress response and a fuel mobilization response. So again, I think I've probably angered a lot of you, and because I've challenged what you hold previously to be true, that you know to be true. But if you take this information and run with it and understand that nothing is ever black and white, that there's always gray areas, and that just classifying a hormone as catabolic or anabolic or something as good or bad is a very dangerous thing. So I hope this has helped you open up your mind a little bit to overtraining and cortisol being the great evil that we've all come to know, and realize that there is a big difference between short-term and long-term. Just keep that in mind. Cortisol in the short term, not catabolic, it's actually indicative of an effective workout. Overtraining in the short term actually is going to help you make gains, as long as you give yourself a proper recovery period of lower volume, and you can recover from that. So hopefully the Tampa airport didn't mind me interrupting their frequent flights with my video log, but I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Thanks.